And so after quite a few hours of wiring and a brief intermission for a massive storm that just rolled through that started to bring water in the garage, fun stuff, got a number of things wired up. So finished buttoning up the right side of the bike with the oil pressure switch and the neutral switch and the rear brake light switch. Got those all wired, and I threw a test battery on and tested the rear brake. Everything works there. And so one note, maybe helpful tip that I'll give just as I go along here, as you complete each part of the bike, again, I can't stress enough how important it is to just have a spare battery laying around and a bunch of jumper cables, jumper wires, test lights. As you complete each section, test it, right? So as I got the wire set up for the neutral switch, testing it, hook those things up, hook the brake light up, throw the power that's going to eventually come to the brake light, throw that onto a test battery, ground it to the frame, and then test your rear brake, right? Test the brake, make sure that piece lights up so that when you're like all said and done, I mean, I know on the chopper shows and Discovery Channel or whatever, like it looks like they wire the whole bike start to finish and then they cross their fingers and turn the switch and hope for the best. That hasn't worked for me in the past. For me, what's best is to do a system, test a system, and know that that part is clean, clear, it's not blowing fuses or popping weird or blowing bulbs or any of that kind of junk. So this side, cool. Moving on to this side was a little bit trickier, and it's not fully cleaned up yet, but let me show you what I got going on here. So this is the wire that goes down to the ignition. I didn't do that part yet, and I didn't do the coil wiring yet. But I wanted to focus on getting the key switch, the high beam, all that wired in, the battery itself to the circuit breaker to the distribution block, and get my inline fuses set up. Now this is a little rough right now. I'll clean this up, zip tie pack stuff together. This wire is going to get a lot shorter. Right now I just have it as a solid wire going from the battery to the breaker. I need to hook this wire in, and I said ignition. That was wrong. This comes from the regulator. My bad. So this is the charge wire that comes back. This will have to connect to that lug of the circuit breaker to constantly feed back juice back in the battery. You can hook this wire right to the positive post of the battery as well. Like, that's fine. It's totally cool to do that. Frankly, maybe I might do that. Not sure. But a lot of times what you'll see, depending on the location of your breaker in your setup, to bring the charge wire from your regulator or generator back to that battery post of the circuit breaker. So I'll do that later, but I wanted to test out what I had here and make sure that this all works. So the bike came with a larger gauge ground wire, which is fine. I'm just going to reuse that. I sanded down some of the paint on the frame rail, if you remember before. Got a nice bolt, confirmed good ground on the frame. So then hooked that up. This is live now. So again, without the charging system and without the coil system, it is live for everything else. And so, moment of truth kind of a deal. This isn't the first time. So spoil it. Like, I'm not drum roll please or anything like that. I already tested this. So key in. This switch has a lock function, which locks the key in if you want to leave it in. I'm not sure why. But then there's a straight up on. So that flips on and that brings the headlights on. So I'll show you what these look like. So that's the headlights. It's clear over amber. And in the wiring of it, I decided to only do high beam to the clear one. The more I thought about it, I'm like, I don't need the amber to be bright high beam. So the wire is there if I ever want to hook it up. Literally, it's like it's already there with the prong. It's already wired. It's just disconnected from the actual light bulb itself. So it's there if I ever want it. And then you can see on the top, the coloration in the camera here is kind of weird. That looks really pale, but I assure you they're like, yeah, the camera does weird. It's like straight up red and straight up green. Very like solid colors. It's not that washed out. And that's the oil pressure and neutral. And now this makes sense because there's no oil pressure right now. But if I shift the foot clutch shift, now it's in first. And the neutral light goes out, I can reach down and flip it back to neutral, so I know that switch is working. I can flip the high beam switch. I don't know if you'll be able to see this in the camera. Let me see if I can steady it. Yep, there's high beam and down, high beam, down. No fuses blowing, nothing like that. The little blue light on the jewel lights up. Yeah, see how in the camera, like this looks blue and this doesn't? That blue is what this really looks like to my eye. And in a similar way, those red and green lights, it looks more of a bold color. But those work. And then around back, confirmed rear brake. Let me see if my arms are long enough to do this. I don't know if I'll be able to stick my foot out here. Yeah, there's the rear brake. So rear brake is working. That's me with my foot up on the brake pedal. So all of it works. The primary wiring for the lighting circuits are all done. So basically all I got left now, turn this off and save battery, because that's actually on the good battery that I want to run. So all I have to do now is hook that charging wire up to the battery. I'll clean up this little red guy here. That was just in there for quick. I got to clean him up. I got to clean up under the seat, right? So I'm probably just going to zip tie some things together and just clean it up, make sure nothing can bounce around. And then I got to do the wiring at the coil. So the way this works, these two wires come from the ignition. And if you notice from a previous video, I did buy white wire. It was bugging me too much that I didn't have any white, and I had to go get some different connectors. And while I was there, I was like, I'm just going to buy some white. So these are extended from the Dyna S ignition. And then this guy is the hot power coming in. So there's a wiring diagram for that I'll go over maybe in the next video, how these dual coils wire up. If you're not running dual plug shovel heads, or if you're not doing anything like that, that part won't be relevant to you, but that'll be in the next video. So I got to do that, and I got to clean up some stuff under the seat, and then, my friends, wiring is finito. So coming together pretty clean. I'm really pleased so far. Separate side note, it's not wiring, it's not chopper stuff, it's not chopper wiring stuff, but in case you're following along in the video series, if you're not following on Instagram, you should go do that, because there I'm going to be posting some photos of what I had to do for the throttle housing. I really needed a custom throttle cable to go from a British 7/8 throttle housing down to an S&SE. The only place I was finding online to do that were places like Motion Pro, and finally heard back from those dudes. They must be busy or something. Finally heard back from them, and it was going to be like $150 or $175 for a throttle cable. So no thanks. Not on this bike. Maybe on the Irish Monkey, I would spend that money, because that one's going to be a more pristine, clean bike. So this one, I have a little bit of a different trick up my sleeve for the throttle housing to make it work. Fingers crossed. So finish the wiring, finish the throttle cable, and then I'm into engine testing and tuning, doing a tune-up, push rods, checking the timing, setting the carb, all that stuff, and then, fingers crossed, fire this puppy up and take it for a ride. Stay tuned for the next video. Cheers.